Final speaker, who was the first chair of Stop the War in... No, he wasn't. Oh, you're right. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, and that was an amazing speech that we just heard, an amazing voice of the Palestinian people and all that they're going through. And the message has got to be, it's up to us to do more and more and more to raise the voice in support of the Palestinian people. And it's great to be in Tower Hamlets, and it's great to have such a fantastic platform here. And I want to just mention my full support for Absal Begum for everything that's been done. For everything that she's been through and goes through, and the horrendous abuse that she's received, and the fact that in Parliament she is one of, sadly, a very small number of members of Parliament who seem to understand something of imperial and colonial history, and has never wavered for 1/2 of a second in support of the Palestinian people, and she's been speaking out in Parliament. And so please recognise the importance of having an including as well who speaks out in that great tradition of this borough, the great traditions of Tower Hamlets, where Jewish people were abominably treated by the National Front and by racists before that, going back, as Barnaby pointed out, to the 19th century and before. And the way the British government responded to Jewish people by then, by bringing in the Aliens Act to stop others arriving. Yet the solidarity was fantastic in the 1930s, in the Battle of Cable Street, which played a huge role in defeating the growth of fascism and Nazism in Britain. And it was the working class communities, the Jewish community, the Irish community, and many, many other communities that came together to defeat racism. And it's exactly the same unity of all those communities, not reported in our media, that's coming together now. Yes, to defeat racism, but also in support of the Palestinian people and their rights. And so, it's those things that we have to understand. This didn't all start on October the 7th, that awful day, October the 7th. And the retribution against the Palestinian people was pretty much immediate by Israel. But as Antonio Guterres pointed out, you cannot look at the issues of Israel, of Gaza, of the West Bank, of the refugees, without some understanding of the history. He acknowledged that the Palestinian people, as you quite rightly pointed out, in 75 years have never known proper freedom, never known a liberation of life away from Israeli occupation or attack on them. And so you have to look at what went on in the past. The Nakba of 1948 drove 700,000 people out of what is now Israel. Most, but not all, went to Gaza. Many more went to refugee camps in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Syria, or to a diaspora all over the world. The descendants of those that went into those camps are still in those camps, living in some cases as second-class citizens with the dream of one day being able to go home. Even the United Nations in the 60s recognised they should be able to go home, and they're still there in those camps. And I'm so pleased with what Kamal and others have said this afternoon. Yes, we want an end to the occupation. Yes, we want an end to the siege of Gaza, but we also want justice for the Palestinian refugees in all of those refugee camps. Don't ignore them and the whole equation. And having visited Gaza on many occasions, I've always been impressed by the strength of civil society in Gaza. People learning and playing music, undertaking art courses, incredibly high level of educational achievement, incredible levels of determination to achieve so much. Palestine is always presented to us as a place where there is a huge conflict going on. Obviously there is. We all know that. But it's also important to recognise the history, the culture and the strength of that culture and that determination of the Palestinian people to, in your great words, have the normality of the mundane, something that many people strive for in Gaza. But then you look at the way the bombing takes place. Now, it's as bad as it's ever been or worse now. But I just remember on one visit to Gaza, there was a house bombed quite near to where I was staying. So we went down to the house. It was during the night it was bombed. We went down there the next morning. And the house had been bombed in the centre of it. The bomb came straight down the middle. Some of the outer walls were still there. Some of the house was still there. The family, for the most part, had been killed. And there was a clock still ticking in the kitchen. The whole place destroyed in just this. Why that house? Why that family? Why such precision targeting of that? I've no idea. No explanation was ever given. And it's that has been the life of the people in Gaza for decades and decades and decades. And then after October the 7th, there was an instruction that the people of Gaza had to leave the northern part and move to the south. Some did, some didn't. Many felt they had no alternative and desperately made their way south. And then the bombing started. And the bombing of the schools, of the hospitals, of the houses, of the infrastructure, of the water facilities and everything else. And the people of Gaza were given as much water as 2 of those bottles per day to survive on. Lack of food, lack of medicines, doctors performing operations without anaesthetic. That was what that bombing was about. And then there was the demand made by the UN, vetoed by the United States, with the complicity of Britain who abstained on it, to veto a motion from the UN calling for a ceasefire. Instead we had these weasel words from the government and the opposition in Britain saying there had to be a pause. A pause for what? A pause so that you can scrape up the dead, give a bit of food to those that are living, and then start bombing again? Or a ceasefire, with both sides not firing, in order to start a process which could lead to the end of the occupation and the liberation of the people of Palestine. And so the political debates that are happening around the world are very, very important. Words matter. I refuse to support the idea of the humanitarian pause. I said it was nonsense. It was an escape from reality. The only thing we should be demanding was a ceasefire. And 125 MPs voted for that. Large numbers of others didn't. And we then had the pause. Prisoners were released. Many more, or perhaps about the same number, were arrested on the West Bank and taken into prison at the same time, and a number of hostages were released. Don't get me wrong, I think hostages should be released. I think people should be released from prison. I want to see peace in the future there. But then you look at what's going on and look at the way the media are presenting it. The media presented this as though it's some sort of war of equals. Well, one side's got F-16 jets, phosphorus weapons, huge 2,000-pound bombs and so on now, and they're using them against civilian targets. White phosphorus has been used and many other abominable weapons have been used. And thousands and thousands, now 14,000 have been killed in the past few weeks alone. And yesterday, I understand 170 more people were killed, and presumably there's more dying today. And when we're campaigning in support of the people of Gaza and the West Bank and the refugee camps. You then look on the social media and look on some television channels, particularly Al Jazeera, of the reality of what's going on. The burning of Khan Yunis, a place I've been to, the burning of Gaza City, a place I've been to, and the horror of what's going on in Rafah, at the Rafah crossing, where eventually it's going to be 2 million people will be corralled into the south of the Gaza Strip, trying to get to a place of safety, trying to get into the Sinai Desert. They don't want to go there. Egypt doesn't want them to come, yet it's be the only place they can go. So what I see before me is a second Nakba going on, as the whole of the population of Gaza is removed, pushed into the Sinai Desert, and a new Gaza created on the other side of the Rafah crossing, around Rashid and other places around there. And the poverty and the horror and the hunger will go on and on and on. So what does it take for the United States and Britain and Europe and others to actually call it out for what it is? The destruction of life of the Palestinian people in Gaza. Are we forever to be spectators of this horror, or do we stand up and do something about it? And I have to say, being in Parliament during the last month has been a bit like living in a parallel universe. I mean, it really is. The parallel universe of Parliament, of political decision-making, of political calculations that have been made, and sadly, the majority of the mainstream media in Britain, where it's apparently bad to even use the word Palestine, never mind calling for the Palestinian people to be able to enjoy a liberated life such as all want for ourselves. This parallel universe where politicians are calculating, well, if I say this, if I halfway go towards a partial ceasefire, maybe those people that support Palestine will think I'm all right, but I don't want to go all the way with them because I don't agree with them anyway. I mean, there's some completely ludicrous conversations going on that I sort of overhear around the place. And then you look at what's happening around the country. Thank you very much. It's a very nice piece of paper. You look around the country at the response of so many people who've just had enough of the silence and are determined to go out and do something about it. So despite the best efforts of the Israeli media machine, of the global media machines, and many politicians, demonstrations are growing and growing and growing, and they will carry on growing. It's really the best thing we can do. The best thing we can do is mount all the opposition, mount all the arguments, unite all of us, Jewish people, Christian people, Muslim people, people of no particular faith, unite people in demanding peace and justice for the Palestinian people. And that's what we're going to carry on doing. And I mentioned something about the culture of Palestine. I want to finish because I've been told I've only got 2 minutes.
Well, that's saying, Jeremy.
He's just after the sweater, but there you go. I want to quote, if I may, a part of a wonderful poet by Mahmoud Darwish, Palestinian poet. And it's we've just put it in this collection of poetry that Len McCluskey and myself have published. I just want to quote the last part of it. This is his poem about Jerusalem, a place that he was, in the latter years of his life, absolutely banned from visiting. I walk as if I were another, and my wound a white biblical rose, and my hands like 2 doves on the cross hovering and carrying the earth. I don't walk, I fly. I become another, transfigured, no place and no time. So who am I? I'm number 1 in the Ascension's presence, but I think to myself alone. The Prophet Muhammad spoke classical Arabic. And then what? Then what? A woman soldier shouted. Is that you again? Didn't I kill you? I said, you killed me, and I forgot, like you, to die. And that was his wonderful poem in memory of Jerusalem. Respect the culture of Palestine. Respect the history of Palestine. Respect their determination and their hope, despite everything, to live under occupation where you only move through checkpoints if somebody will let you go through. You only get to school if a soldier will allow you to go there. You're only able to cultivate your land if the settlers will let you have enough water on the West Bank. And you see your land being taken day by day by day by day by more and more settlements. And then you see the world's powers pouring military resources into Israel to continue the occupation. And you see the most grotesque injustice possible. Other wars are taking place, yes, but the most grotesque injustice possible. And you realise the only way forward, the only way for peace is to end the occupation, end the siege of Gaza, and justice for Palestinian refugees. That is what we will all keep on demanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, and to all of our speakers for keeping roughly to time. We've had a great afternoon. I'm going to ask Shabby has got one small announcement to make as you're packing up, but the last thing I want to do is, can we thank the venue and the people who hosted us this afternoon?